The next morning, Star dressed carefully. It was Monday, and she usually tried to look her best on Mondays, but today, she was extra intentional about her look. If she was going to land herself an alpha male, if she wanted the love of this incredible man, then the least she could do was to look the part. Men were visual creatures. She had read that somewhere. She loved how the color combination matched her fair complexion. She peered at her face in the mirror and nodded in satisfaction. She was ready. Of course, she was not dressing for Stanley. He wouldn't be at her workplace. He would be at Silver Towers, battling an overwhelming Monday like the rest of them. But she and Uche with a few others would be having a virtual meeting with him in the afternoon. He never really showed up in person for their Monday meetings, but she planned to leave her video feed on and walked around her office while giving her presentation, giving him a tantalizing view of how good she looked. The conceited man didn't even bother to call her after she left his house. That showed how much he had not been schooled by any woman, and that she was prepared to teach him how to love a real woman. "You are getting ahead of yourself," she said to herself as she took one last look at herself in the mirror and left her room. The day turned out to be crazier than most. Uche was in a bad mood because some rookie executive had sent him a wrong report he needed to negotiate an important deal. Though the rook had been suspended, everyone on his floor walked on eggshell. No one wanted to be yelled at or fired. Stan knew he would normally try to rein in his temper around her, but sometimes he was not very successful. So just like the others, she avoided him. By the time the meeting with Stanley was to begin, her nerves was flayed with thoughts of seeing him again, with Uche's bad mood and with all the meetings she had attended. Just as she sat down and began to set up her laptop for the meeting, she got a text that the meeting would take place in the executive boardroom. She heaved a sigh. She hoped Uche was no longer in a bad mood. She wondered why he wanted a virtual meeting done in his presence. Would Stanley be there? Had they opted for a physical meeting instead? That can't be the case, because he too will be swamped at his own end with meetings of his various corporations. Reluctantly, she carried her laptop and her files. She left her office. If the boss was in a bad mood, the least she could do was be on time so as not to incense him further. She opened the boardroom and entered. She dropped her laptop and files and heaved a sigh. She was glad she was the first to arrive. That gave her the needed time to compose herself. Her gladness was short-lived as she heard the door open and close, and she immediately felt the hairs on her nape stand. Only one man had the power to make her feel so aware of him. She whirled around and saw him standing casually leaning on the door. They stared at each other. She ate him up with her eyes hungrily. His black slim trousers and his sparkling white shirts. His tie was gone, and he was carrying his suit over his forearm as he stood there, arms crossed and watching her intensely. How can one man be this handsome, this powerful, this incredible? How was it possible that he could make her feel things with just the strength of his gaze? She wanted to run to him, to throw herself at him, to be devoured by him. She wanted to run her fingers across those hard chests and packed abs. She wanted to strain against him as he kissed her with emotions only he could evoke in her. But she had promised herself she would keep it simple till she found a good strategy to win his love. "What are you doing here?" She gripped the edge of the table, leaning on it because she could not trust her hands to obey her and not find a way to rush over to him and wrap around his neck. As she spoke, Stanley narrowed his eyes at her question. What was he doing there? He asked himself. He had spent better part of the night tossing and turning, wanting her, and at the same time trying to forget how she felt beneath him, straining against him, writhing beneath him. How sweet her lips had tasted. He had managed to survive the night without calling her or driving across town to her house. He had thought his schedule would keep him from thinking about her, but after barking at too many executives, he accepted it wouldn't, and had driven to attend in person a meeting he could have had virtually. If Uche wondered why he wanted to come in person, he didn't say, and for that he was grateful. "Why am I here?" He repeated her question and took a step towards her. He looked at her, that slim and curvy body in chocolate and tan, and he was reminded of all the naughty things he could do to her with chocolate in mind. He was insane. This was madness. He took another step towards her and she tried to step back, but there was no way for her to go. Her back was already against the table, and he closed the distance between them, having her exactly where he wanted her. He watched the slight increase in her breathing, the fevered rise and fall of her breast beneath her silk top. He put his hands around her waist and lifted her on the table, but her tight skirt wouldn't let him, so he adjusted the skirt. "What are you doing?" she asked, yet making no move to stop him. "Thinking of chocolates? Anyone can walk in any minute. I told you not to leave yesterday, and you disobeyed me." She stared at him like he had gone mad. "Just kiss me so I can get my senses back," she thought, but instead she said, "And what made you think I would obey you?" He chuckled. "You don't know what you have put me through." He smiled calmly. "I am not doing this with you." She tried to get off the table. "This is an office and I am about to give a very important presentation. I don't need this now." He held on to her waist. "We will find out as this progresses, if this progresses, that I am much more of a nicer person when I am obeyed." "You think?" She spluttered in anger, but could not finish her sentence because just then he swooped in and kissed her hard and fast and let her go. "Adjust your skirt. I hear footsteps." He grinned at her mischievously. Star, who was trying to get her senses back after the sudden kiss, barely had seconds to adjust her skirts before Uche walked in and found her still sitting on the table. He frowned at her and she realized she was still sitting on the table gaping like an idiot, while the culprit was already walking to the head of the table with Uche, like he hadn't turned her into a mushy box of needs, desires and emotions. She wanted to punch him, to get back at him somehow, but there was nothing she could do at the moment. "What are you doing on the table?" a bewildered Uche asked. "Sorry Uche, I was just adjusting my..." Then she trailed off and jumped down and gave Stanley a killing glance as she heard him laugh. What was wrong with her? She nearly told Uche that his best friend had his hands on her skirt a moment ago. She gave him a venomous look and walked over to a seat. She would get back at him, he would see. Just then, Chuck walked in his usual distressed jeans and t-shirt. "Hey Star," he gave her a hug. She hugged him right back for a second or two, not knowing how much she needed that. A gesture of kindness from someone. That someone was usually Uche, but he had done nothing but back at everyone, including her. She was at a stage in her life where she was flaying, where it seemed as if her foundation had been removed. Then she looked at Stanley, saw his eyes narrow at the exchange of affection between herself and Chuck. "Good," she muttered, anything to wipe that conceited grin from his face. "Was the update with Chuck's automobile?" Uche began, and then it dawned on her that she had prepared for the wrong meeting. She had never made this kind of mistake before. "I am sorry, I thought this meeting was for the telecommunication acquisition." "Why would Stanley be present for the telecommunication acquisition?" "I am sorry." She began calling up the right document for a presentation she wasn't ready for. "Hey man, easy," she heard Chuck say. And suddenly it was all too much. She stood up. "I am sorry, I need a minute." She did not wait for their permission. She practically ran out of the room. "Hey, what's going on?" "Just having a bad day." "Don't take it out on your friend." "I haven't." "Excuse me," Stanley left too. "What's going on?" Uche wondered. "You mean with those two?" "Those two? Come on man, you don't..." think, Uche stammered. Chuck kept a straight face, staring at him sardonically, and they both laughed. She got to her office and kicked off her shoes. She walked in jerky, frustrated movements to her chair, sat down, bowed her head on the table. Suddenly it was all too much. Uche's temper, Chuck's kindness, Stanley's seduction. She had never made a huge mistake of confusing one meeting with the other before. She had always been put together. This scatterbrained, confused person wasn't her. She was losing herself in her so-called infatuation with Stanley. She could feel herself losing control bit by bit, and try as much as she could. There was nothing she could do to save herself. "Are you all right?" she heard Stanley ask from the doorway. "Go away." "Why? Not who you're expecting?" She raised her face as she detected the hardness in his voice. He did not come to offer sympathy like she had thought, but for something else she couldn't put her fingers on. What's that supposed to mean? It doesn't take a genius to know why a woman would get all flustered and run out of the room after kissing her ex. She stared at him shocked. Then all she could see was the red haze covering her vision. She got up from her chair and walked to him. "I don't have to explain or defend myself against this vile accusation, but Helen is my friend, and I can't allow you to taint her marriage with such wicked thoughts." She jabbed her fingers at his chest as she spoke. She missed her heels because her head could hardly reach his shoulder. "Chuck is not my ex, and never was. I don't harbor any romantic feelings for him. Now get out of my office. And you see this? Whatever it is over. Just leave me alone." She turned and walked away from him, but he caught her hands and flipped her around, and suddenly her back was against the door and he loomed over her. "Be careful what you ask for. Next time when you ask me to leave you alone, I might do just that. A decision we would both regret, but today I put it down to temper on both sides." He left. She stood there, transfixed on the spot, flabbergasted and smothering with anger. She couldn't believe what had just happened. What a conceited, arrogant pig. Oh well, he had actually mistaken her for one of those women who would give their right hand to be with him. Well, she was going to show him when she said it was over, she meant it. She would show him, she assured herself as she tried to calm her anger and jumping nerves. Stanley walked back to the boardroom and sat down, his face a mask of granite. "What's going on?" "First, your smart, always put together senior executive looking harassed. Now your best friend looking like someone slept with his wife." Stanley directed his hard stare at him, which made Chuck ring. "What did you do?" He turned to Uche. "Me? Nothing. Maybe you should ask Stanley. He was the one who did something to her a few moments ago." He gave Uche another hard stare. "Are you?" Stanley began. "So I come in and find my, like you put it, smart executive sitting on the table, lips swollen, with a faraway look on her face, and half-heartedly trying to bring down her skirt. And my best friend smug." "Interesting. Since when?" Chuck began to speak. "There is really nothing serious happening between us. Not when she's your ex, or yours, or maybe both of you," Stanley said venomously. And to his chagrin, both his friends burst into laughter. "Is this what all this is all about? She was never my ex." "Same here," Chuck chorused. "Never slept with her." "Same here." "Yes, we flirted a time or two, but Star was never that into me." "Same here." "She turned me down saying she did not want to jeopardize our working relationship and friendship. The truth is, she's a little too hard to get." Stanley stood up from his chair and went to stand by the window, deflated, and that niggling guilty feeling of remorse and regret began to creep up his spine. He knew his friends were telling the truth. He felt like an ogre. What kind of a man was he? Something was wrong with her, and she left to calm her nerves. Instead of offering comfort, he acted like a monster because He couldn't see past his jealousy or his insecurity with chalk. Star is an amazing woman, Uche added. Just as he turned to answer him, Star walked in, looking calm and composed, like the last hour did not happen. I am sorry, I just needed a minute, she apologized. Uche waved off her apology as she sat down. She avoided looking at Stanley. She was determined not to look at him. As difficult as it was, she was determined to stay away from him, no matter the cost. She took a deep breath and began her presentation. Star pulled to a stop in front of her house and sighed heavily. She was very tired. All she wanted was a shower and sleep. If she was honest with herself, all she wanted was sleep. She would not make it to shower with how tired she was. She dragged her tired body out of the car and locked it. Then she saw the latest Range Rover parked between her neighbor's house and hers. She wondered how much doctors had paid and how her neighbor, the good doctor, could afford such a car. She sighed and dragged herself to her front door, stealing her thoughts from everything Stanley. Her mom opened the door for her, laughing gleefully, and she was taken aback. Welcome home, honey. And oh, we have a guest. She stopped on her way upstairs, suddenly panicking. It was at the tip of her tongue to ask who, when Stanley emerged from the kitchen, carrying a dish. Star stared at him dumbfounded.
In the still of the night, I think of you. My heart beats with every thought of you.